So several weeks ago, we started a series called Becoming a Contagious Christian. And really we began talking about the early church. And, if you read the book of Acts, it's just so clear about that their faith was contagious as they lived every day going about. The people that they rubbed shoulders with, the people they went through life with, were coming to Jesus by the hundreds and by the thousands. And so the goal of this series is, I think that the church today, we need to be more contagious. We need to be more aware of the people around us that are hurting and need Jesus. And we need to be intentional in trying to find avenues and ways to help them. I told you I was reading a book, a sociological study on the history of the growth of the Christian faith, the growth of Christianity. And from the first century to today, the church has grown by an average of 4%. So if you go from the very beginning now, I think there's 1.2 billion Christians right now, people that claim to be Christians, and it continues to grow. But over the last few years, the growth of the Christian faith is 1%. And actually in Western culture, in America and through Europe, it's actually Christianity is in decline while it's exploding in different parts of the world, Iran, Iraq, India, Nepal, China. And so there's some, I think that if we're involved in something and it's declining in our area, we have to take personal responsibility for that. Let me tell you what every adult in the room, our job is to leave the Christian faith better than we found it for our children. That's our job. 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 20, it says this: "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The new creation has come, the old is gone, and the new is here. And all this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us, to you and me, the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. So we implore you on Christ's behalf to be reconciled to God." And on week 1, we gave you a formula, and they're going to put that on the screen. But basically, it's high potency. So we have to have a high level of the Spirit of God in our life. We need to be filled with Jesus. So if we're filled with Jesus, and then we have to have close proximity. Again, we have to rub shoulders with people that need Jesus. And then if we're able to clearly communicate the gospel, our faith, why we believe, it has a maximum impact. And so we've talked about several things. And I know Todd spoke last week, and I listened to that. I was watching from Mexico, and he did a tremendous job. But today I want to talk about the subject of friendship evangelism. And, when I was growing up, people used to go around and hand out tracts to people. And I just think those days are over. I think the way you win people to Jesus today is through friendships, through relationships, by influencing people with your personal relationships. And of course, this is how it happened in the first century. Let's read John 1, verse 35 through 51. This is talking the story about John the Baptist. It says, "The next day John was there again with 2 of his disciples, and he saw Jesus passing by, and he said, 'Look, the Lamb of God.' And when the 2 disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, 'What do you want?' And they said, 'Rabbi,' which means teacher. Where are you staying?' 'Come,' he replied, 'and you will see.' So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent the day with him, and it was about 4 p.m. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, 'We have found the Messiah,' that is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. And Jesus looked at him and said, 'You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas,' which when translated is Peter. The next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee. Finding Philip, he said to him, 'Look,' he said, 'follow me.' Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. And Philip found Nathanael and told him, 'We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph.' 'Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?' Nathanael asked. 'Come and see,' said Philip. And when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said to him, 'Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. Another translation says, there's no guile, there's no impurity. How do you know me, Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you. Then Nathanael declared, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And Jesus said, you believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than that. Then he added, very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. So clearly, during the birth of the church, the book of Acts is the first 30 years of the birth and the growth of the Christian church. And clearly the pattern of evangelism used in the early church was friendship evangelism. You tell your family, you tell your friends, you tell the people you work with, the people you associate with, basically using our passion and our influence to bring people into relationship with Jesus. And, friendship evangelism is basically leveraging your personal relationships in a good way to share our faith and bring people into the kingdom. And what we see from this story was, first of all, John the Baptist, he pointed his disciples to Jesus. They followed him. Then Andrew went out and found his brother Simon Peter and brought him to Jesus. Jesus has a conversation with Philip. Then the first thing Philip does, he goes and finds Nathanael and brought him to Jesus. So without question, the best way for us to share our faith is through personal relationships. And every day we have interactions, every day we have conversations with people as we just travel through the journey of life. And, at work, in our neighborhood, at the gym, at different social settings and hobbies. In fact, there was one study out of Britain just recently, and it said that the average person has 27 conversations a day. Now, I know some of you have 27 conversations before you drink your morning coffee, but the average person has 27 conversations a day, and those conversations average 10 minutes. So that's a lot of talking, and so we're doing plenty of talking. The question is this: are we ever guiding our conversations to Jesus? Are we ever guiding our conversations and the people we're talking with to the source that can solve all their problems and transfer their life? James 1:19 says this. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And, I believe the key to steering our conversations to our faith, to steering our conversations to Jesus, the key is listening. How many of you here today are bad listeners? We have about 6 honest people. In my opinion, I'm one of the best listeners in the history of the world, but my wife will tell you. One time she told me, Terry, this is a long time ago, Terry, you need to listen to people. That person was talking to you, and as soon as they quit talking, you just went in a different direction. I said I did not. And so I had to go apologize to Hugh. It was Hugh. And but don't we do that? And so what listening is when someone's talking, I'm not thinking about what I want to say. I'm trying to listen to them, because here's what I've learned. You don't have to ask people for them to tell you their problems. If you listen, they just tell you their problems. It's just, because we're worried about certain things. For example, if you listen, someone may say, man, my child is just really struggling in school, or my husband was just laid off from his job, or, my marriage, I'm really struggling in my marriage, and my husband and I, or my wife and I are just not getting along, or I've been struggling with anxiety, with depression, with an eating disorder, with an addiction, or I'm looking for the answers to happiness in life, and I just can't seem to put my fingers on it. And so, again, what we want to do, just very simple, we listen to people as they're talking, and we're listening to the things that they're going through, and what we want to do is we want to connect with them and take the conversation to Jesus. There's many in here that would be in divorce court if you wouldn't have found Jesus. If someone's talking about their marriage and in trouble, you say, hey, I've had that same thing. My husband and I, my wife and I, we struggled for years. And you know what? Man, we started going to church. We gave our life to the Lord, and we've learned so many helpful things that have just really just slowly over time just put our marriage back together. So I want to talk for a moment this morning about sharing the message, your testimony or my testimony. And that's all we want to do is we want to listen. Then we want to use parts of our testimony, parts of the things that God has done and transformed in our life, and we want to help other people. See, when we share a testimony about the things God has done in our life and how He's turned our life around, what it does is it gives them hope. It gives them a reason to believe. But 1 Peter 2:9, the message, it says this: "But you are the ones chosen by God, chosen for the high calling of priestly work, chosen to be holy people, God's instruments to do His work and to speak out for Him." Now see, let's stop here. Many people think that it's the pastor's job, or it's the leader's job, or it's the elders or deacon's job to do priestly work. And what Peter says is everyone that's been saved, everyone that's given their life to the Lord, all of us, we're called to do priestly work. We're called to help people. We're called to work and speak out for Him, to tell others of the night and day difference He has made for you. From nothing to something, from rejected to accepted. One of the great testimonies in the Bible has to be in John chapter 4. Jesus is going through Samaria and He stops at a town of Sychar. And remember the woman at the well, she's at Jacob's well. She's an adulterous woman. She's been living with all these different men, and it's just Jesus and her at the well. The disciples went off, and she's getting water, and He said, if you knew who it was talking to you, you would ask him for living water. And this brings about a lot of questions because it's a well, and I've told you before that in ancient time, living water was water that was moving. He said, man, if you had the living water, you would never thirst again. You would never want that water again. And, this woman, Jesus kind of reads her mail there, and it says that she goes back into town. And then John 4:39 says, many of the Samaritans from that town believed in Him, in Jesus, because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. He told me everything I ever did. And so this one woman, who's an adulterous woman, she was out at the well at a time when none of the other ladies were there because she didn't want to be made fun of. She didn't want to be mocked. And this lady, who really is the lowest of the lows in this culture, she goes, and because of her testimony and what Jesus did in her life, she comes back with this group of people, and many people gave their life to the Lord. So my testimony, or your testimony, it's just your story of how you began a relationship with Jesus. That's it. It's your testimony is your story. How did you begin a relationship with Jesus? And a personal testimony is the most persuasive form of communication. So here's the thing. People may argue with a lot of stuff, but when you tell them directly, this is what my life was like, and I met Jesus, and this is what He did, and this is where I'm at now, it's hard to argue with that. When you're sharing something, a transformation in your life, something that's happened, I mean, I've never heard anyone say, I just don't believe you. Now, they may not believe something else, a fact or whatever, but it's hard to argue when someone tells you, this is what I've experienced in life. It's very hard to argue with that. So I want to give you, there's 4 parts of your testimony. Many of you maybe have never shared your faith. You don't know how to share your testimony, but there's 4 parts of your testimony. Let me mention them real quickly, and then I'll go through them in a little depth. First of all, what my life was like before I met Jesus. That's part of your testimony. Now, that should be the shortest part. When I was growing up in church, whenever they let someone give their testimony, the whole testimony was about all the sinning they had done. We don't want to give the devil glory, but this is what my life was like before. I was a mess. I was unhappy. My relationships were in trouble. I was unsatisfied. I was trying all these different things to fill the void. What my life was like before Jesus. Number 2, how I realized I needed Christ. Number 3, how I committed my life to Christ. And number 4, the difference that Jesus has made in my life. Those are the 4 things. So you spend the least amount of time on what you were like before you met Jesus, a little bit more time on how you realized you needed Jesus, a little bit more on how I committed my life to Christ, than the most time on the difference it's made. So let's go through these real quick. what my life was like before I met Jesus. And what you're looking for is, what common circumstances would this person I'm talking to, this unbeliever, what would they identify with? What were my attitudes like that they would identify with? What was most important to me? I mean, money, career, popularity, whatever, pleasure. What substitutes for God did you use to find meaning in your life? I mean, but think about it. If God's not in your life, you're using substitutes. You're using something to fill the void. Maybe it's sports or fitness or success at work, relationships, making money, maybe an addiction, drugs, alcohol, having fun, entertainment, popularity, hobbies, whatever. So what was my life like before I met Jesus? And how am I going to connect that with the person I'm talking to? How can I weave that into the conversation? Number two, how I realized I needed Christ. And so in other words, what significant step led up to your conversion? Lord sent someone in your life. Some people had a dream. Some people just have this, overwhelming sense of conviction. But what hurts, what needs, what problems made you dissatisfied with how you were living without God? And how did God get your attention? What motivated you? How did you realize you need Christ? Number three is how I committed my life to Christ. And what you're going to tell them is, how exactly did you commit your life to Christ? Man, I was in my room and I just got down on my knees and I just gave everything. I gave everything, to the Lord. What did you say in the prayer? Be specific. And, people need to know that the main thing is you're asking Jesus to be the Lord of your life, and you're repenting for the sin and asking him to forgive your sins. That's the main thing. And then the most part is, what is the difference it has made in my life? What benefits have you experienced or felt since you came to Jesus? And I want to, it should be peace, joy, confidence, love. And if you're here today and you're a Christian and you're not experiencing peace, love, joy, contentment, then we need to go back to the building blocks and maybe recommit our lives to the Lord, because there's a disconnect there. Because Jesus is transformative. When he comes into your life, he just blows things up. When you give him free will, he's going to take things and he's going to get things moving, in a positive direction. Amen. And so again, if you can't sit there like right now and list 5 or 6 things, the difference that he's made in your life, we need to go back and, okay, are we doing Christianity right? Are we doing Christianity right? And doing Christianity right is we're all in. We're all in for Jesus. It's really quiet. That's good news. So let's talk real quickly about, you can think about that. And I think, you know how when something's important to us, we go through it in our mind. So if you're going to go ask your boss for a raise, or if you have an idea at work and what you're thinking about is you have a plan. When I submit this to my boss, he's going to ask me questions, and you try to figure out what the questions are. Why don't we do that when we're sharing our faith? We know when we bring things up, they're going to ask questions. So what if we were actually praying about that before? What if we're actually thinking about that before? See, I think sometimes today, we just want people to come to Jesus, but we've got to put the work in. And part of the work is living in such a way that is attractive. And so I want to finish today by talking about qualities needed to influence people. What are qualities needed to influence people? And I think one of the problems today is if we're saying we're Christians, but our life isn't there, why would they want what we have? So there's more. I'm going to give you 3. And seriously, you want to start influencing people, not just for Jesus. You just want to have influence. And listen, God created the church to be an influencing agent in our world. And that is not happening to the degree that it used to. But you know what? I know this. We can pray. God, give me favor with these people because I want them to know you. We can start praying and fasting and have some compassion and empathy for people. It goes a long way. Let me talk about 3 things, and I'll finish up. Well, it's still early. I'm doing good. I may finish early. I'm not used to being taught. I was up in high elevation, man, and I don't know, I had a lack of air. Qualities need to influence people. The first one is being authentic. Being authentic. Now, here's the thing. People don't expect you to be perfect. Sometimes in the church world, we think we have to be perfect. No one expects you to be perfect. However, they do want you to be real. And there's a lot of people in life today, and they're just not real. They're phonies. They're phonies. On the mission trip, I had a man tell me, Terry, it's not hard to know what you're thinking. Thank you very much. I'm just being real, right? Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But in other words, hey, we want people to know I have problems too. I have struggles too. I have disappointments too. I mean, Christian life isn't perfect, but the thing is, I have someone to lean on. I go to God in prayer. I go to God and I ask Him for help, and I read my Bible and I pray, and I have an accountability of other Christians that I meet with, that I go to church with, and if I have a problem, they're praying for me too. See, that's being real. We're not trying to sugarcoat things and acting like it's perfect. We want things to be real. And there is a problem because if people do not see you as being authentic, you will never influence them. You won't even get them to come to your kid's birthday party, much less share Jesus. Oh, now you know why no one comes to your kid's birthday party. It wasn't about the kid after all, right? So I had an experience, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever Hurricane Harvey was. So I lived by the Brazos River, and my home ended up flooding. But I knew the water was coming, so I drove to Louisiana and I bought an aqua dam. I should have brought pictures, but I didn't. It's big, huge. I put this water dam around my house, and so what happened is it actually didn't work because the water got over that. It got 4 feet deep. But I was out there for 36 hours. All my neighbors' houses were flooded, and I had a pump, and I'm just out there getting delirious. I've told this story before. So 3 guys came by when the flooding started. And they said, I said, hey, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing okay. They're like, hey, if you need help, one of them said, if you need help, call me. And I'm like, yeah, well, I think I'm fine. He said, hey, I said, give me your number. And he gave me his number. He said, you'll never forget my name. My name is James Bond. So, at 2 a.m, I was by myself, and I was like, hey, I wonder if James is asleep. So I called James Bond. I called in 007. I called him in. And he drove his jet ski to my house. He drove his jet ski and he tied it up over at my neighbor's house. And it was funny, about an hour later, his jet ski wasn't there, and he had to swim and go get it and bring it back. And anyway, this guy was here. I had never met him before. We're just talking, and I said, hey, do you mind if I just pray? Do you mind if I just pray, And he said, yeah. And I said, Lord, look, this is my family's house. I'm asking you to protect it and help me to salvage it and keep it from flooding. I don't want to have to rehabilitate my house. But, hey, your will be done. And, about an hour later, he said, Terry, I have never heard somebody pray such an authentic prayer. And I've never seen somebody that was willing to fight for your family like you are. And that, so the long story is our house ended up flooding and all that. But so him and I kept in touch. And I ended up marrying him and his girlfriend, him and his wife. And they came to family life for a number of months until they bought some property out of town and moved out there. And but isn't it funny that in a flood, I wasn't trying to be spiritual. I really didn't care about him that much at all. I just cared about my house. I'm just being honest. And about my family and all that kind of stuff. But he just saw authenticity. And we built a friendship out of that just from that one thing. And I couldn't believe that someone that I had never met before, he's a special guy too. I can't believe that somebody I've never met before came and pumped water with me all night. But what I'm saying is, sometimes we have a choice. Do you want to be cute or do you want to be real? Do you want to hide things or do you just want to be real? Do you want to be authentic? And people appreciate authenticity. A lot of times the term hypocrite's used. And I was telling the Thrive group last week, most people don't even know where that came from. Does anyone of you in here know where the term hypocrite came from besides the Thrive group? Well, it came back from the Greek plays, the Hippocratic plays. They had all these actors, and one actor might play 5 parts, and they would just hold a mask up. And so hypocrite means a mask wearer. somebody that changes their identity. And so in the church world, sometimes people say that, there are hypocrites in the church world. There's hypocrites in every world, in the business world. But a hypocrite is somebody who they come to church and they wear one mask. And then they go to work and they wear another mask. And they're around another social group and they wear another. They go to happy hour with their people from work and they wear another hat. And see, what authenticity means is this. We put the Christian hat on and we live like that everywhere we go. I mean, again, we're going to make mistakes, but we're not, the greatest example of a hypocrite really are politicians. I'm serious. If you listen to them and follow them, they go to this group and they're saying what pleases that group. And they come over to this group and they're saying exactly what that group wants to hear. And if you played both tapes, they're different. They're contradictory, And so anyway, I just got out of the church and I got on the politicians. We're all happy, right? So we have to be authentic. Authenticity. You don't have to have all the right answers. But if you're authentic about your faith, I'm all in for Jesus. I don't understand everything, but I know it works. I know he has power to transform your life. I know that if you lean on him, he can change your marriage. He can heal your child. And people are looking for answers. And we have the answer. And by being authentic, we have the opportunity to share Jesus with people. Number 2 is compassion. Compassion. So authenticity and compassion. Characteristics that help you influence people. Compassion. John Maxwell used to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It doesn't matter how much theology you know. If someone has a broken down car, help them get their car fixed. If someone has a flat tire, help them fix their flat tire. If your neighbor needs you to watch their dog while they're out of town. I mean, have some compassion. And compassion, what it does is it's an obstacle mover. Like in life, there's all the time there's people that we may not like. There was a certain person that, it's not that I didn't like him, I just didn't care for him, I mean, there was nothing there, I just didn't care to be around him. And then all of a sudden, one day, this person had compassion. He helped me do something I didn't even ask for. It changed my whole perspective on this person. I'm like, wow, what a caring person. I had him all wrong. Sometimes we have things all wrong, but we're supposed to have compassion. When you're moved by compassion and you demonstrate the love of Jesus, it melts the hearts and removes the barriers that were previously in the way. If you're new here, we're an international church, and we have just like over 500 churches in India and Nepal. And this is how, so India is not a very compassionate place. I'm just being for real. And at least where I've been, it's not compassionate. And, there's no programs. If you're poor and don't have food, you just starve. No one cares. The government doesn't care. It's just not a compassionate place. And so what our church do, Pastor Jose, he finds a village that doesn't have any churches or it's no Christians, and he'll go there and he'll go to the village elder and say, hey, I have some extra clothes. Can I give these clothes to these people? He's like, sure. And so he gives them clothes. They distribute that. And then a few months later, he'll go back and he'll take a bunch of food. Hey, I have all this extra food. Can I give this to your people? He says, sure. And then they'll ask him, why do you care about us? You don't even know. You've never met us before. Why do you bring clothes? Why do you bring food? And he'll say, but because Jesus cares about everybody. And Jesus told me to bring this to help your people. And then they'll say something like, well, we've never heard of Jesus. We'd like to know more about Jesus. He said, well, can I bring one of my associates and put him in the village here? And of course, one of his associates is one of his new pastors he's trained. And he brings them, and that's how they start church, just by giving compassion. These people had never had anyone give them a handout, never had anyone give them food or clothing, and that's how they introduce people to Jesus. The third thing, so authenticity, be real. Second thing is show compassion. And again, at church, if we're living life without compassion, we really need to evaluate, because when you read the Gospels and read the life of Jesus, everything he did was based on compassion. He had compassion toward the down and outs of society. That's why they loved him. The third thing is this: you have to engage people in conversation or friendship. And again, you can be authentic. You can have compassion. You can live a godly and righteous life. But if you never engage in meaningful conversations, how can you influence somebody? In so many of our relationships, we have the relational surplus to where we've done enough, we've talked enough, we've known each other long enough. We have basically a surplus in that relational account, and it would be fine for us to engage in a spiritual conversation. And again, we're not going to be preachy. We're not being condemning. All we want to do is share Jesus. But again, if we have all these other components, but we never engage people in a conversation, how are we ever going to influence somebody? So I'm talking about doing the other things first. You don't try to engage in a conversation until, unless it's a unique situation. You want to build the friendship, and you want to build some influence there. But again, the reason we want to live godly lives, authentic lives, and be filled with compassion is so that we have the opportunity to speak into people's lives. And the way we live determines if we can gain access to their hearts. So during this series, I've just been encouraging you and challenging all of us to really think about being more proactive. And all of us in this room, we have neighbors, we have family, we have friends that maybe they used to go to church and during COVID, they just quit going. And listen, I think it's important. Can you be a Christian and can you go to heaven if you don't go to church? Absolutely you can. But that's not the way Jesus told us he wanted us to do life. He wanted us to be in relationship with people. And so I'm just challenging, as we gear up for this Friends Day, I'm just challenging you, and even beyond that, to really start praying and saying, God, put some people in my way. Who are some people that I can influence? And I have 6 families that I'm working on and believing are going to come for Friends Day, and I just believe God is going to do something special. But a recent study, and this study has been done every year for the last 20 years, and it stays the same. This study said this. They studied people who didn't go to church, and 80% of them said that they would gladly attend a church service with a friend if they simply gave an invitation. That's 80%. So most people that you're friends with that don't have a church, they would come at least once. Now, we believe that God's going to do something. We believe God's going to do something every week, but we believe God is going to really touch some lives. And so when you leave here today, out there in the foyer, in the Life Center, on the offering boxes, and maybe we can get the Brother Larry. Maybe we could get some of the ushers to have some of those invite cards in the Life Center just out there to hand to you. But we have invite cards with the date and the directions to our church. It's just something real simple that you can hand to people and just say, "Hey, man, we would love for you to come." And I'm gonna work with you a little bit more, but let me, I invited someone to church when I was youth pastor in Lafayette. I invited my neighbor. He had never been to a Protestant church before, and he said he would come, but he kept walking across the street, and he kept asking me questions. Okay, when I pull up to the church, where do I go? So what I'm saying is, when you invite somebody, we're going to have free donuts up there in the cafe. Tell them to come early. Meet them there. Help them get their kids checked in. Help them get some donuts. Take care of them. You remember when you've been somewhere and you've never been there before? You're like, okay, what door do I go through? There's 2 buildings. So we're not going to invite them. But hey, this would be something new for you to get here a little bit early. It's a revelation, but I assure you it'll be okay, right? And it's kind of like if you invite someone over to your house, you meet them at the front door and you bring them in. You don't yell at the door, "Hey, just come on in." Leave a note on the door. And so, we want to be good guests and good hosts. And so, would you stand with me today? Now, I'm sure, I know when we have this many people in a room and people watching online, I'm sure that there is at least one or more people that say, Terry, I have never given my life to Jesus. I have never done that. And my whole point is this, is that my life got so much better personally when I went all in for Jesus. When I went all in for Jesus, my life got better. Things that I was struggling with, he helped me overcome. My relationships are better, just everything. And so if you've never given your life to Jesus and want to do that today, just bow your heads with me and close your eyes. And if you're here today and say, man, Terry, today is the day. I've been running, but today I want to go all in for Jesus. I want to give him my life. I want to surrender my life to him. Would you just raise your hand if that's you? I would love to pray for you. I see that hand anymore. Let's just pray together with that person. Just say this prayer with me, and we'll say it all together. Say, Father God, I am so thankful that you sent Jesus, your son, into the world. And today I want to give him my life. I want him to be my Lord and Savior. And I want my sins to be forgiven. So today I give you my life. And I ask you to come in and just transform my life today. Amen. I'm going to ask the prayer team to come up, and we're going to close with a worship song. If you don't need prayer, we have time just to worship. But if you need prayer, all of these men and women up here, you don't have to go to the same person. Incredible encouragers and prayers. If you have anything you'd like for them to agree with you by faith, let's just do that, and I'll come back and dismiss us in just a minute.